Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
I've been doing this podcast since September of 2012, and boy, are my lips tired.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
And we are recording this on Christmas Day 2023. So to those of you who celebrate the holiday, Merry Christmas. We hope that you've had a wonderful Christmas this year. And my special guest joining me today doesn't have any problem doing a podcast on Christmas, which is a wonderful thing all by itself. But she's got an interesting thing. She's got a book called The 5-Day Job Search. And in an era where particularly younger people have found a lot of trouble finding the kind of work they've been looking for, to take the next steps in their lives and so forth. But actually, no matter what age you are, it's a challenge these days to not only survive, but to thrive economically. And, it's an issue that a lot of people deal with. So when they hear about the idea of getting a job in 5 days, because that's what that implies, a 5-day job search, that sounds probably pretty close to miraculous for many people. So I don't know about you. I'm kind of curious to find out how all that comes about. First, though, I need to welcome my guest, Annie Margarita Yang, to the show today. And Annie, well, thank you, first of all, for joining me on Christmas. That's wonderful all by itself. But how you doing up in Boston, Mass?
I'm doing great, thanks. You know, I was away in a cabin up in New Hampshire for a couple of days. I came back and then I hadn't looked at my calendar because I'm on holiday, and I kept thinking this was for 7 p.m. Eastern time. And then at 3:51, I looked at my calendar. I was like, oh my gosh, it's in 9 minutes.
Well, thank you for...
I'm here on Christmas, but I almost missed it, actually.
Thank you for jumping in at the last minute then. Oh my goodness. That would have been really interesting, because I'm actually recording a second episode with my friend Joel Elston at 7 p.m. So at that exact time, we would have been trying to do two at once. That would have been interesting. But anyway, well, welcome to the show. Tell people how you got into this whole idea of doing a 5-day job search. Where does that come from?
That comes from the fact that I was able to land a job in only 5 days. So, right after high school, I worked a whole string of minimum wage jobs, and I didn't go straight to college. And a whole bunch of people always pressured me and said, like, Annie, in order to succeed in your career, you need a college degree. So finally, I got a degree in communications, but coming out, I was working at Domino's Pizza. So it didn't work out the way people kept saying it would work out. So when my husband and we moved from Texas to Boston, I said, this is a new life for us here. I have a new identity. I don't know anybody. So I'm just going to do whatever I want. I don't care what people think, So when I moved here, I applied to 50 accounting jobs with no accounting degree. And then in 7 days, I got an offer. Now, at that point, I thought I was just lucky and God had blessed me, right? I was like, wow, I'm so fortunate. But then a couple months later, I was looking for another job again, and I got it in only 6 days. And then 1 year later, when I needed to make $35,000 more because I needed to qualify for a mortgage, I was on the job search again, and I got it in only 5 days. So at that point, I was like, it's not luck. This is skill. I must be doing something right.
It certainly sounds like it when you get 3 in a row like that one. I'm particularly intrigued, though. Accounting isn't exactly something that you typically would associate as being, well, I can go get that job without some sort of degree in accounting, and yet you did it. So why don't we start there? How did you get an accounting job without an accounting degree?
I had started working as a bookkeeper. And no prior background in bookkeeping before that first job. I was actually working at a grocery store doing cashiering work and slicing deli meats. And then one day, I was just so sick. I was so sick of working there. It was a part-time job, but my coworkers, they kept calling out sick because they were hungover every day. And then,
okay.
So they would call out sick the day of their shift. And then my boss would say, Annie, can you please come in to cover someone's shift? And then I was just so sick and tired of doing that because I was really reliable. And I was just like, no. So I quit with nothing lined up. And I thought I think I'm just going to get another grocery job, right? And I walked into a supermarket, Seatown Supermarkets in Brooklyn. And the guy told me I'm not qualified to cut cold cuts because you need, he's like, you need 1 year of full-time experience cutting cold cuts in order to be qualified to do this job because our customers are very, very picky about their cold cuts. And then I was like, okay. Right. And then it just so happened in that same week, I walked into a hardware store so that I could buy supplies to make a table. I needed to buy supplies. It was like a DIY table that I was making. And then the owner of the store was like, can I get your number? I was like, sure. I gave him my number. He was just like, it's just if I ever want to keep in touch with you. I was like, okay. And then a couple of days later.
I mean, that's an unusual conversation, just that all by itself out of the blue.
And then on the last day of like that 2-week resignation period, right? I got a call from the owner of that hardware store and he said he wanted to give me a full-time job in bookkeeping.
Wow.
Yeah. It just so happened.
Did you ask him what made him, first of all, want to take your number, and second of all, think of you for a bookkeeping job when it sounds like he hadn't even talked about bookkeeping with you?
Yeah, I was like, what is bookkeeping? I didn't even know what it was. I asked him and he said, well, I thought you might be pretty smart to do this job because you came in, you knew exactly what you wanted to buy. And a lot of our customers are males, you know, and they know what to do, but you come in, you're a woman. We almost never get a female customer, and you come in, you know what you want, right? And so clearly you must be smart enough to do this job. I was like, okay. Interesting.
Okay. So what happened with that? I mean, it sounds like you took the job?
Of course I took the job because I had nothing lined up. I took it. I did really well with it. I ended up learning QuickBooks. So I got my feet wet with bookkeeping. And then that was in Brooklyn, New York. We moved to Texas. I got another bookkeeping job. So by the time I went to Boston, while like accounting is not the same thing as bookkeeping, you need to know more than just bookkeeping. I was like, you know, I don't care. You know, I'm just going to apply because what happened was in Texas when, I was going to move, right? So my boss had to find a replacement. So she found someone to replace me and I had to train my replacement who said, she said to me like, oh yeah, I know bookkeeping. I know how to use QuickBooks. So then I was like, okay, well, I don't have to show her the basics. I can just show her the things specific to this company, right? And then, but she was asking me things like, how do you sort the vendor list from A to Z?
Okay.
And then I was like, do you actually know QuickBooks? And then she's like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. And then I was like, okay. And then I found out that, so I was making 13 an hour. I found out she was getting 18 an hour and she didn't know what she was doing. She didn't know how to sort the vendor list from A to Z. So I was like, that's not right. She had the confidence to say that she's qualified when she's not. Whereas I'm actually qualified. I know what I'm doing. So if I'm going to go for these accounting jobs in Boston without an accounting degree, I mean, I think I should have more confidence in myself.
Very interesting. I'm recognizing a parallel actually to my own experience, because I got out of college in 1980. And for those who were alive at that time, you'll remember that was the year that we had just completed a year of hyperinflation. Inflation was in the double digits. Jobs were scarcer than hen's teeth. They were really hard to come by. And like so many people who had come out of school at that time, I was, putting out resumes, the old fashioned way. We didn't have LinkedIn. We didn't have all the stuff that you have today. You were sending out resumes in the mail or knocking on doors and that kind of thing. But I wasn't getting anywhere. Nothing was happening. Nothing was clicking. And so I took another look at my resume and decided to add an item to it because I had bought an early computer. Remember the 1980s. So this is like the PC had just started to come out. This was the Apple computer had just started to come out. The Mac hadn't even been invented yet. The Mac was 4 years down the line from there. But I put down on my resume that I knew how to use a computer because I did, and it made sense to me. That action led to a series of jobs over the years. Every time that I put that on my resume, because nobody knew how to use computers yet. Literally my first job was to teach other people in the office how to use a computer because nobody knew how to do it. So it's kind of a similarity there. I mean, I had no credentials, no degree, nothing like that. It made sense to me. I could do it. And, oh yeah, we want that guy, right? So kind of similar. Here's the guy who's running the hardware store saying, yeah, somebody who's smart. We just need her. She'll do our books for us. It's the same kind of thing.
That's right. Actually, he hired a whole string of people after I left, and they could never do the job as good as me.
Well, I didn't say that his method was a smart way of hiring. I'm just saying it worked. Very interesting. Okay, so you got a job that way, and it sounds like you just described, I think, two positions that worked out the same, two or three, I can't remember which, that worked out very similarly, where you basically moved up in the world and you did it each time within 5 or 6 days.
Yeah, it was 3. I managed to do them in less than a week. 3 jobs in less than a week.
Wow.
But the other jobs prior to that, because of the law of attraction thing, I don't know why I just kind of attract jobs into my life, just like how that one, the bookkeeping one, just fell in my lap. I didn't apply for that, you know.
So what's your theory about that? Why do you think that happened?
I'm not actually sure. A lot of jobs actually in the past, prior to those 3, where I actually had to apply, they kind of just fell in my lap. So like, for example, my doctor, my primary care doctor at the time when I was working at the hardware store, she asked me what I was doing for work. I said I was doing bookkeeping. She's like, great. Can you do my payroll? Can you come in every 2 weeks and do payroll for me?
Wow.
Or like, at that same hardware store, there's this customer who came in to buy kitchen cabinets, and I didn't even talk to her. I just, played with her dog for 5 minutes. Didn't even say hi to this lady. I just thought her puppy was so cute. And then she just walked up to me. She's like, young lady, you're very smart. I want to give you a job. And then I was like, what? What makes you think that? You know? So jobs kind of just always, came to me very naturally for some reason.
Well, I think you've hit on a couple of the factors. Confidence is certainly a big part of it. You were describing how you were perceived as being confident, and you felt confident. You were feeling confident each step of the way because you'd acquire a piece of a skill, and you felt like, okay, I know this, and you would display that, and you'd start believing it. And sure enough, it would lead to something else coming down the pike for you. That literally is the way the law of attraction works. The more that you truly believe that stuff's going to happen, it's going to happen. And it happens in multiples, which is what you're also describing. It doesn't happen just once. It keeps coming and coming till you finally say, okay, I'll take that one. Which is pretty much what you were doing. All right. So you got 3 jobs in a row that way. Had you gotten to the point where you were doing what you wanted to do yet?
Yeah. I mean, I love doing accounting. This is something I've always, I didn't necessarily know I loved accounting. I just knew for a fact since I was 20 years old, the one thing I want to do is something financial related, because like I'm really good with my personal finances. So even when I was earning minimum wage, I was saving between 25 to 50% of my income. And I just love to save money. I would watch every single penny. And if I saw like a store charge even a penny more in sales tax than they were supposed to, I would go back to the store and ask for a 3-cent refund or something, you know?
Oh my goodness.
I'm very over the top when it comes to this kind of stuff. And so, now that I do accounting, you know, I kind of just do the same thing for an employer on a bigger scale. Like, you know, if I catch Vistaprint was charging sales tax on the shipping line, and I asked for a 12-cent refund, little things like that.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. There are some people who would advise against that. They're saying that's not a valuable use of your time, but you don't see it that way. You see that as a valuable use of your time.
No, I genuinely see, the way I see it is the client's money or my employer's money, I treat it like it's my own. You know, like if I saw somebody charge even $15 too much, I get upset. I'm like, no, you got to give us a $15 refund. You know, I almost treat it as if the company that I'm working for is my own company when it comes to the money.
That's a good attitude. I like that. I'm an employer, and if I had somebody who's a prospective employee coming to me with that attitude, that's somebody I want to talk to. That's somebody who's like 80% of the way to getting a job just because of that attitude. So I'm totally on board with that. Now, nothing you've described so far matches up with, say, Indeed.com or one of the job search sites. In other words, you're not getting these jobs going through a job search site, which is the way most people are finding work these days or attempting to find work. So you're going outside of that box in a sense.
No, actually, initially in the career, it was outside of that box, but for those 3 job searches, it was all Indeed, all ZipRecruiter.
They were. Okay.
All of those. So the ones when I had to apply, because I didn't know anybody, I moved to Boston with no network whatsoever. I didn't know anybody. So the only way for you to really get opportunity when you don't have a network is to apply, right? So what I did was I wrote like this highly targeted resume. So I wasn't like making a brand new resume for each application. I just wrote one highly targeted one for the job title, which was staff accountant or accounting manager, right? And then I would click the easy apply button. So on Indeed or ZipRecruiter, I would click on the easy apply button where I didn't even look at the listing. I was just like, that has the title I want. Okay, apply. So I'm in the book, the 5-day job search. I'm literally telling people, if you want to succeed, you need to apply to 50 jobs a day. And the reaction I get from podcast hosts, from anyone I talk to when I tell them 50 jobs a day, they're like, 50 jobs a day? Like they start freaking out. And then I'm like, don't freak out. There's this easy apply button. And if you literally spend just a minute clicking each one, you can apply to 50 jobs a day in an hour a day. So yeah, after a whole week, you'll have applied to about 300 or 350 jobs.
So
you're bound to get something.
I'm going to kind of go out on a limb and suggest the idea that the approach that you're talking about works really well for something low level to mid level in a company. Probably doesn't do so well when you're trying to go after presidencies because there just aren't that many president jobs.
Yeah, no, I think those are headhunted. And those largely depend on your network, your reputation. But it's Christmas now, and back in February, so just 11 months ago, I was offered a part-time CFO position. And that was actually from my client. I was doing accounting work for my client. And then he likes my work so much. He just emailed me randomly one day. He's like, I'm offering you a part-time CFO position in my company. Do you want to take it? And I was just like, no, thanks. But so I think, beyond those, entry level and mid level, it's more about developing a certain reputation to the point where everyone wants to recommend you for those high level presidency positions. So it's that is a lot more networking and like online branding so that you're hunted for those positions.
All right, so let's look at a couple of scenarios here. Let's start with the scenario of somebody who's in the ballpark I was originally talking about. They're recently out of school, perhaps. They've got a ton of student loan debt. They haven't been able to find the job they're looking for in their career path. They aren't really sure how to get the whole thing started. So they're pretty much entry level at that point. So what do you advise somebody like that?
The first thing I advise them is to think very hard about what they want to do, because I think a lot of people, they're aimless in their search. You have to know what you want to do. Like, for example, someone came up to me. We went to community college together. He didn't finish his associate's degree in the end. And right now he's working as a front desk agent at a hotel in New York City. And I asked him, well, what do you want to do? Like, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And he told me that he wanted to be a hotel manager. And then I was like, well, you can't just go from working at the front desk to being a hotel manager. Like, what does it take? Let's do the research, right? So then I did the research for him. I looked on LinkedIn and I filtered for only people who had a current job title of hotel manager to work backwards from there and see what positions did they take along the way to get to where they were. And it turns out that it takes on average about 7 promotions to finally become a hotel manager up the chain. And if you're not like smart about the titles that you go after, then it'll take about 9 or 10. So if you're efficient and follow this, then you can get there in 7. But if you make lateral moves along the way, that doesn't necessarily help you go up. You're going sideways. You'll get there in 9 or 10. So that's a difference of 6 years in your career, right?
Sure.
So based on this research, we realized that the title he should be targeting next is actually front desk supervisor. So you have to get really clear about what is the title that you want. Like when I first came out, I didn't understand just how the accounting titles worked. They go from like staff accountant to staff accountant 2, senior staff accountant, then accounting manager. So there's like all these titles that along the way go up, but nobody explains this to you.
This
right?
is true.
They don't explain that to you. And if you actually want to progress in your career, you have to think, what do you want to be? Do you want to be director? Do you want to be CFO? Or do you just never want those kind of executive positions? Think about that first and then work backwards. That's my advice to people who are just fresh out of college and looking for an entry-level job.
Very interesting. This is very, very interesting. I mean, it's been years since I've been in the position of needing to do that. Although later on in life, I did go through a time where I needed to figure out how to resolve my own economic issues, and it would have been helpful to know some of this stuff. But I particularly like the way that you're talking about doing the research. I'm curious, do you recommend using AI like ChatGPT or Bard or something like that to do some of the research for you, find out what you ask the artificial intelligence bot, like, tell me what's the most common way that people get from being a front desk person to a hotel manager, and see what it comes back. Do you try that at all?
I actually haven't tried that in terms of researching the positions, but we do use AI in terms of like figuring out what gaps do you have. So what we do is we take the title. Let's say in the end, he needs to target the front desk supervisor title. We'll type into Google hotel front desk supervisor job listing. And then we'll open up 20 new job listings in a new tab, and then copy and paste the whole job listing from top to bottom and type into ChatGPT for analyze this job listing. What is the employer looking for in their ideal candidate for this job? And then it'll come back with like a 2-page analysis of what their ideal candidate looks like. We'll do it for like 20 different listings because, let's say over and over again, it's repeated. We need somebody who has experience in this specific software, or we need somebody who is flexible with their schedule and willing to work weekends, right? If it's repeated more than once, then it's clear that it's important across the whole industry. So A, it needs to be communicated in your resume and your LinkedIn profile. And B, you also need to speak to that in your interview about why you're a good fit. You know, if you are, if you do meet those things that they're looking for. And then also with the same analysis, you can look at what gaps you're missing. So like, let's say it says over and over again, you need experience in something very specific and you're missing that. You can already start working toward closing that gap by either taking a course, reading a book on it, something. So that way you can go into the interview confident that you're able to do this.
I love that last bit. And I say love a little bit sarcastically, but I love that last bit about reading a book to add that to your resume. The reason I'm laughing at that is the last job I ever worked at where I was working for somebody else was about 24 years ago, something like that. It was for a mid-level insurance company. I was a senior level IT server administrator. And I was asked by my boss to interview somebody who wanted to come in to work in our team to interview her for a job. And this was at a time when certifications were just starting to really come onto the rise. The major companies were beginning to offer certifications. In this case, they were Microsoft services. So we're talking about Microsoft certification. Literally, Microsoft certification had come out within the last year or two. So it was really, really new. And this woman who I'm interviewing has like every single certificate that Microsoft offered. I mean, I think there were 7 or 8 of them at that time. And she had all of them. She had every single one of them. And so my boss and his boss, they were over the moon like, this is a great candidate. Just give us your read on this candidate. So I sit down and I interview her and I'm asking her about her certificates. And I remember one of the certificates she had was in what was known as terminal server. And I'm not sure I can give you a modern day equivalent to it, but the basic idea was it was a way of terminal server was a way of doing, shared data processing, kind of similar to like an old mainframe with dumb terminals, but not quite the same thing. But anyway, I was asking her, okay, so tell me, what you know about terminal server. She knew nothing. She knew nothing at all about it. She had no clue what it was.
Even though she got a certificate in it?
She had certification in it, but she had no idea what terminal server was. And so I really went, really down on her because like, wait a minute, you got to be kidding me. You're claiming these certifications. You don't even know what the darn things are. I actually said, no, don't hire this girl. She's trying to pull the wool over your eyes. But the point is, I mean, she probably actually did get hired by the company. I never really heard one way or the other, but, she probably ended up getting hired because of that certification. And since then, certification has taken off like crazy. I mean, everything has certifications these days. In fact, I was doing a little job research, not for myself, but because I'm an employer, I was looking at, what are other companies looking for and so forth. I was stunned at how much of them are looking for this certificate or that certificate or, this credential or that credential. And it's really kind of exploded in many, many ways. So here you are talking about, well, just go read a book on it. I'm thinking, wow, all right. So that's what a credential is, a book. It qualifies as a credential.
I don't like to, you can't put it in your resume, right? That you read a book on this. But if an employer asks, like, do you know about X, thing, you can say, I don't know. I don't have a direct experience, but I do know that it's important to you. So I've already started reading up on it.
Interesting.
It displays your proactivity. That's what I think, your ability to take initiative and to sit down and study, basically. And I think that's the important trait to talk about here. Is not necessarily about do you have the qualifications on paper, because I still don't have the qualifications on paper. I don't have an accounting degree. I've been told many times that I'm not qualified for certain jobs. But so those are the employers that care, and then we have employers that don't care whatsoever about what qualifications you have on paper. You know, like my current boss, what he cares about most is my character. He cares more about the fact that I'm always looking to learn new things.
Talk about that, because personally, I pay close attention to character as well when I interview somebody. So talk about your experience with that. Why do you think there are employers who are interested in that? Why is character important?
It's important because I think there's always this huge focus on like whether you know how to do the job or not. But then like we have people these days, they lack ethics, they lack morality, they're willing to lie their way through anything. I have a cousin. My cousin got a degree in accounting, so on paper he's more qualified than me, but it turns out that he lies on his resume. He came to me asking me for help with his job search. And then he told me he outright lies on his resume because he said there's no other way I can get a job otherwise. But This is accounting. Like, this is accounting, you know? I think character is so important because look at all the corruption we have. What was it? I think there was a mayor it was either in Connecticut or Rhode Island, one of those. But like last month, I read a story in the news about how she embezzled $1 million so that she could buy a property with city funds personally. I was like, how can you get away with something like that? It's so corrupt, right?
Well, apparently you can't. She got caught.
She got caught, but it took several months for her to get caught.
Yeah.
What's so funny is like, I think it took the Registry of Deeds a couple months to catch that.
Wow.
And they were the ones recording the transaction. Can you believe that?
Right.
Yeah. So the character is really important because look, especially in accounting, we're dealing with money. We expect financial reports to be accurate. People make decisions based on these reports. So if you're the kind of person who's willing to lie to do anything, we can't even trust the report. Do you see just why the character is so much more important than whether you know how to do the job or not? You can learn how to do the job on the job, but I cannot teach somebody how to have character. That's something your parents were supposed to teach you.
It's interesting you say that. One of the things that I look for, now my company is a company that provides gardening services to local residents who can't do their own gardening anymore. So I'm always hiring people who have lots of gardening experience, but I'm also looking for people who are going to fit well in the team. Typically each season we have anywhere from 6 to 10 gardeners on the team, depending on where we are in the season. And as a result, there are times when the team are literally working the same property together. I mean, sometimes it's one gardener per property, but sometimes it's 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on how big the job is. And the reason I'm so concerned with the team is I want to know that everybody who's teaming together is taking on whatever needs to get done rather than, well, you do this and I'll do that because I don't want to have to do that job over there. Because that kind of thing just wrecks everything. Whereas when everybody's just diving in to get it done, the job actually gets done in fewer hours than estimated. And we look really, really good at the customer. So I'm really concerned how well do they work together as a team, and how well is the person who's applying going to work with the rest of the team? It's a really big deal. I don't really think of it in terms of character, but you know what? That is character. There really is character.
Because you know what? The aspect you're looking for is attitude.
Yes.
And attitude is a feature of character.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Well, it's attitude, and it's also, let's see, what's the word I would use? I can't come up with a single word. I would use a phrase. It's how well do you work with others? And that
cooperation.
Cooperation. But what's your attitude toward others? Because I thought the word attitude was an accurate one. It's not just your attitude. What's your attitude toward the people you're working with? Because the people who have a good attitude toward the people they're working with are usually the ones who are the good teammates. The ones who come in with an I know it all attitude, they don't last very long. They really don't.
In your company.
In my company.
In other companies, they might last a long time.
They might. That's possible. That's possible. But, yeah. So anyway, very fascinating. Okay. So, how many times have you actually used this yourself? And then, talk also about, ways that you've been helping other people with this, because clearly if you wrote the book, you've been helping other people. That's where some of your data is coming from, I imagine. Yeah.
I mean, look, I basically walk everyone through the same thing that I did. But it turns out like things that I thought were obvious, it wasn't obvious to other people. Like I was telling this guy, I'm helping someone who is 70 years old, but he's really good with computer. He's, an Oracle database administrator. I think it was.
Those are valuable.
At 70 years old. So he's like very, very competent at what he does. He's been doing it for at least 35 years.
Yeah.
And because of his extensive experience, his resume, he showed me was 3 pages long. And
Yeah,
I was
sure.
like, we can't do that. We can't do that. It's got to be cut down to a page. So he told me when he came to me last month, he's been unemployed for 6 months. Right. And then I was like, that's weird because I know he's a really smart guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I sat down with him, I realized a 3-page long resume. And then after I cut down his resume to 1 page, he self-sabotaged himself. I specifically said, now take the top of this resume and put in your own personal contact information because I was recording this and I was going to make it public and I didn't want other people to know his contact information, right?
Right.
It turns out after we got off the call, he actually removed all of the contact information section off. And then he was like asking me like, I don't understand why people aren't calling me for interviews. And then I was like, let me take a look at what you uploaded to the site. So I downloaded it from the site and I was like, how do you expect anyone to call you if you self-sabotage yourself in this way?
Yeah. Well, particularly taking away your own contact information.
Right. And then his response was, well, if they really liked me and wanted me to work for them, they'll find a way to contact me.
You know what? That's actually a fairly common belief system these days. That I don't know. You tell me, but my take on that, and this isn't just in the world of job search. I see it among entrepreneurs. It's a huge thing among entrepreneurs. It's amazing to me how few entrepreneurs actually provide more than one way for them to be contacted. And usually it's a contact method that's untraceable. And I think to myself, what kind of credibility does that create in the mind of their buyers?
I have no idea because like, for example, the Korean lady who bought the kitchen cabinets who wanted to give me a job when I was at the hardware store, I still kept in touch with her, right? And last year she asked me to help her find a new bookkeeper who was local to her in Florida. So I made a whole list of all 50 bookkeeping service companies in Fort Lauderdale. And I was just like, well, I'm just going to like email each and every single one of them. And a lot of them don't put their email address on their website.
Right.
A few of them did, so I could email them directly, but a lot of them just put the contact form. I was like, oh, okay, I'll just fill out this contact form. And then, a lot of them don't even have an email address or contact form. It's a call this phone number only. And then I was like, I'm not going to do that, Like it's a lot of time for me to call and then get their voicemail and then play phone tag and things like that. So yeah, a lot of companies do make it difficult to contact. Another example is, my plan was to get on 500 podcast shows to promote the 5-day job search book, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And initially what I did was I got a list of podcasts from this website. It's called Raphonic. Basically they mine certain databases and export all the data, to tell me only the podcasts that are related to career or law of attraction, like only the categories that I wanted.
Sure.
So I got this whole list of like 5,000 podcasts to do outreach for. And then my goal was to start reaching out to each one, but then I realized, wait, how do I easily contact these guys? I could find their show and I know their website, but then I go on their LinkedIn, there's no email address. I go on their official website, there's no email address and no contact form. And then I was like, how do they even get guests on their show when I'm trying to be a guest and I can't even find their contact information? And then I realized,
it's a miracle.
I was like, how do they get guests? I don't understand. Finally, I gave up. I paid for this service to get all this whole list, and I just gave up. I scrapped the list, and then I got on podmatch.com and I got on matchmaker.fm so that I could become a guest. But that was crazy. I realized a lot of people don't put their contact information public.
I would think this ties into job searches as well. I mean, you tell me, but how often do prospective employees fail to provide easy ways for employers to find them?
I think all the time, because this is common sense to me, but apparently it's not common sense to other job seekers. But I would also deliberately put my email address as the last line of the summary bio, the objective portion of LinkedIn, because I know for a fact that if somebody is not a connection to you on LinkedIn, there's no way for them to contact you, right? So even if they liked your profile, they just came across it and you didn't apply for the job, but they just came across your profile, there's no way for them to message you or contact you or call you or anything. And even after they become a connection, and they click the contact info button, that depends on your setting. So like if you didn't make the setting like public to your network or whatever, they still cannot see your contact information. So I was like, the smartest thing to do for anyone to be able to contact you easily is to really just put your email address public as like the last line of your bio. But I even get pushback on that. Like when I recommend people do that, they're like, but what if they take my email address and they add me to some like spam list or something like that? And then I'm just like, I can't stand this resistance. The resistance. There's a reason, an excuse for everything that I'm recommending that works that people don't want to follow.
Well, it's a really important point. We talked before we got started about, what we'd be talking about here. And you were asking me, we're talking about law of attraction. And I explained to you, well, we did law of attraction for the first 400 or 500 episodes. And after that, we felt like we needed to expand the topics because I was loving doing the podcast. I was enjoying it. But I mean, you pretty much covered it all in 400 to 500 episodes. So I felt like we had done it all. And yet here we are bringing it in once again. One of the main concepts with law of attraction is resistance. The different ways that we resist bringing stuff into our lives that we want to have, even though we want them, even though we desire them, we still resist them. It's often in ways that we don't even realize that we're resisting. And here you are describing in graphic detail exactly how people resist getting the job that they want. It's amazing.
I swear, yeah. People sabotage themselves in ways you would think are ridiculous.
Well, let's talk about what some of those are. I mean, we've identified a few here. What are some of the other ways that people self-sabotage when it comes to their own job searches?
Well, the way I'm literally holding this guy's hand, the 70-year-old guy for the database administrator role, right? I literally said, I want you to click the apply button, 50 jobs a day, right? And then he came back to me and said, oh, I did it. But the problem was I didn't check his work. So I just took him for his word. And he said, I applied, to about 200 jobs. And then I was like, oh, okay. And then, at that time it was Thanksgiving week. So he was telling me, well, no one's called me back or emailed me back for an interview. And then I was like, well, you have to understand it's the holidays, right? So that's understandable. It's reasonable. Everyone's on vacation. So then the week after, for his homework, I still said, you still have to apply to more jobs. And then, by then, the next time we met, he should have gotten some callbacks based on my experience of how my job search went, right? And he still wasn't getting any callbacks. So then I was like, do you know, something's weird. Something's off. I don't really understand what's going on. So finally, I was just like, hey, Peter, when you apply for these jobs, is there like a section on Indeed.com or Dice.com where he was doing it that shows me what jobs you applied to? Like, is there a section that already shows which ones you've already applied to so then you don't apply to it again? And then he's like, I don't think so. And then I was like, well, just share your screen and let me take a look. And then we opened it up. I found the section on Dice.com, and it turns out he only applied to 40 jobs total. So I was like, this isn't 50 a day. This is 40 total. Now, this is what I want you to do. I want you to search the words database administrator into the search bar, and we saw 937 listings, right? I said, if you don't have all 937 applied to by next week, don't call me back. I said, we're not meeting next week unless you tell me in advance that you've applied to all 937 that I see here. Because like, he didn't apply to 50 a day like he was telling me when you actually look at it.
Do you know why he didn't? I mean, was he just embarrassed or was he confused, or did you ever find out why he wasn't doing it?
He gave various reasons. He's like, well, I'm so busy. I have so many things to do to take care of my personal life. Oh. I was like, you're unemployed. You've been unemployed for 6 months. How are you so busy? I was telling him I work like literally 10 to 12 hours a day. I work 6 days a week. I still have time to take care of my personal life. I mean, do you need a full 12-hour day to take care of your personal life? Right? I don't take excuses from him because I was like, there are people who have full-time jobs as well, with just a 40-hour week, and they still manage their personal life. They have kids to take care of as well, and they somehow are able to do it all, right? So how do you need 12 hours to take care of your personal life? You know, I was just asking him for 1 hour per day. So he came back to me the next week. He had applied to 500. I checked.
Whoa, okay.
I checked. He did 500, and now it's been 3 weeks since that point. He's gotten a job offer. He has a job offer. They're just in the negotiation stage right now for the salary, but he has the offer.
So this is another interesting thing. And this is something I've actually discussed with numerous people over the years. Back when I was working in the corporate world rather than being an entrepreneur, I would do the pre-technological version of what you're doing, which is I would just reach out to every single company I could find in the area that did the kind of thing that I was looking for and apply to them. Even if I didn't know that they had a job available, I'd send them a cover letter and a resume. And I had this really cute little graphic that gave them a laugh. And I got phone calls from employers saying, I don't have a job for you, but I just wanted to let you know I loved your application. It was great. I got a laugh on it. It was great. I loved the letter. It was wonderful. So, I did get some response out of it. And every time I did that, I did get the work. But I've talked to many people who think that that's basically a waste of time, that all you're doing is scattergunning. You're just, shotgunning at a wall and seeing what sticks to the wall and that it's not an effective way to find a job. But you're saying, no, that's actually the best way to do it.
Well, those people who say otherwise, that say you're just, doing and seeing what sticks, right? My question back to those kind of people is like, did you try it yourself before making those kinds of assumptions and statements? I used to really care a lot about what people were saying, but then I've come to realize that the things that they're saying to me, did you try it yourself first before actually saying that to me and giving me your advice? Because unless you've successfully done it yourself, I'm not interested in what you have to say.
I love that.
No. I'm serious. I used to really ask people for their advice, and then I came to realize that they're not qualified to give the advice that I'm seeking. Right? Like the people who say, oh, applying to 50 jobs a day doesn't work. Did you apply to 50 jobs a day and see for yourself? No? Then I'm not interested. Because one of the things that I'm doing now, it's not job related. I'm learning piano. I was never allowed to learn piano as a kid. My parents couldn't afford it. And finally, when I was 26 years old and I was making a 6-figure income, I'm like, I have all this money and I'm just bored out of my mind. I want to start pursuing the things that I wanted to as a kid, right? I don't want to believe that where I start in life is where I will end up. I want to see how far I can go, no matter where I started. So at 26, I started taking up classical piano and I said, I'm going to be serious about this. I want to see if I can become a professional classical pianist that actually gets to perform on stage and Carnegie Hall and everything. I want to see if I put in my 10,000 hours of practice, how far can I go? And I had people telling me you can't learn piano as an adult. It's impossible to learn piano as an adult. When you're an adult, your brain is no longer absorbing things like a sponge, and your nervous system, like the hand-eye coordination, just isn't as good as if you were a kid. And I was listening to what people were saying, and I was like, I guess that's right? These 6 studies that also test these things were saying that as well. But then I came to realize, I was like, wait a minute. The people saying this, did they practice 10,000 hours on the piano?
I was waiting for that.
Did they actually sit down and deliberately practice? Did they buy an actual acoustic piano to practice on instead of a keyboard? Did they find the best teacher in the area to teach them? Did they set aside 2 hours per day to practice? Did they do all of the things that were required, that is required for a classically trained pianist who becomes a professional? And I realized, no, they did not. And even these scientific studies that say, it's much harder for an adult with a hand-eye coordination, compared to a kid. I'm just like, wait, these studies, they were short term. And these studies also didn't force an adult to practice piano for 2 hours a day for a year to see how far they could go. They probably just did a study that was a few days in duration. And then they came up with their conclusions for their study. So I don't want to believe those studies. And I'm about 1,000 hours in at this point. And I don't think it's talent. I think it's practice.
I love that. Not the least of which is there are 365 days in a year. If you do 2 hours a day for 365 days, you still haven't even done 1,000. You're up around a little under 800 at that point. So I think it's a great point you're making. You got to put in the time. And by the way, I played piano when I was a kid. I stopped for years and years. I got myself a keyboard a couple of years ago and I've been, picking it up ever since. And so I really appreciate that part of the story. I'm not trying to become a concert pianist. That's the last thing I really want. I do it because I just like making music for myself. I think it's fun. But whatever the reason is, it doesn't really matter what the reason is. What matters is you're pursuing what you love to do or what you think that you love to do. And you're going at it with gusto. That, when you talk about 10,000 hours, that's going at it with gusto.
Yeah.
And you know, you could even change your mind in the middle. You could get 2,000 hours into it and say, oh, no, this isn't for me. I'm done with this. And that's okay. It's a perfectly legitimate decision, but at least you gave it a shot. You tried it.
Yeah. I want to say I gave it my best shot.
Yeah.
I want to say that, you know, I'd rather be, by the time I hit that, even if I did just 1 hour a day and I slowed down, by the time I hit it, I'd be probably 40 years old. I'd rather be 40 years old and able to play like Rachmaninoff and stuff like that than 40 years old and not being able to play piano at all. You know, I'm going to be 40 years old anyway at that time, you know?
Yeah, sure. What are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with it? One of the things that I've talked about numerous times here on the show is trying things out. Now our overall topic here is job searches and helping people who are trying to get that next job or to get their first job, perhaps. But there's also a big piece of it that I think gets overlooked. I'm curious to see what your take on it is. You talked about how you wanted to learn piano from, you know, a very young age, but you never really had the opportunity to do it. And then you described to us how you just kind of threw yourself into it, which is wonderful. The thought that comes to my mind that I often propose to people is try things. Even if you can't try them in depth, try them. Because the one thing that will do more than anything else to help you find what you love is to try it. If you don't try it, you don't know whether you love it. You may think that you do, or you may think that you won't, either way, but you won't know until you try it. And I love how you just dive in and try it. But I'm curious. I mean, do you try things out even in the short term just to see, do I like this? Do I like this? Do I like this? Or do you just find one thing and you just go after it?
Oh yeah. The whole reason why I ended up playing piano is because I tried this. And then I realized I don't like it. Like I was, because I'm so frugal, you know, I say like I watch every penny, right?
Right.
All throughout the years. I was trying hobbies and recreational activities that were a lot more frugal. And then I would try and then I'd be like, oh, I'm bored, you know, and then finally I questioned myself. I was like, why do I try something and then try and then drop? And then I look back and then I was like, there was no single hobby that I actually committed to like going deep with. And then I was like, you know, I think something I always wanted to do when I was a kid is I wanted to play piano. So why don't I try it? And then it turns out I enjoy it so much, I can just keep going. Right?
I totally get that.
I actually think, I couldn't come to terms with the fact that like I'm 26. I felt really bad, but then I'm actually looking back at it now 2 years later and I'm just like, I actually appreciate the fact that I started learning when I was 26, when I have the financial means to learn, because now there's no reason for me to give up. Like if my teacher wanted me to do something that costs a lot of money, I'm just like, okay, sure. You know, there's just no reason for me to say no. Or like, one of the things she recommended that I do is New England Conservatory every Friday morning. They have free classes open to the public. So on Friday mornings, I just cut work and then I just go take the free class. But that's only because I'm now at the time in my life when I have the ability to command more autonomy over my own schedule. If I wasn't at that point in my life, I wouldn't have been able to do that.
All right. So let's go back to job searching. By the way, I love everything you just said. I just want to tell you, I think it's fabulous. But I want to go back to job searching, particularly for those who are recently out of school, haven't been able to find their particular first job. They have not been able to get their foot in the door. They're complaining that the job market just isn't working. You know, all their friends are having the same problem and so forth. Now, you've already given them one really good clue. Apply 50 jobs a day. Are there other clues you can give them?
Oh my gosh. You know, I think one of the problems that people fresh out of college have is they don't have experience. So I saw a TikTok short, a month ago of this person who had a marketing degree and $80,000 in student loan debt. And she was saying that because she didn't have any marketing experience, she couldn't even get an entry-level job in marketing. And then she was working as a server at a sushi restaurant. And, but she was also saying like, she was making more as a server at a sushi restaurant than she would at an entry-level marketing position. She thought she would come out making $100,000 a year in marketing, and that's just not how it works. And to a young person, I would have to say, like, stop being so focused on the salary, right? The way I've always done my career is that even if it doesn't pay what I want it to pay, my long-term thought was like, at this position, even if I have to work for free, there were many things, by the way, I had to do, I did for free. Okay. I did a lot of things for free to get to where I am today. Even if it doesn't pay any money, if I commit the time to learning how to do it, then I think that I will become so good at it later on. It sets the foundation for my future success, right? I think that's the important thing. People focus on like, oh, the marketing job pays only $35,000 or $40,000, and it's not even enough to pay my bills or cover my student loan payment or whatever it is. But you have to think of that long-term thing. If you really want something, you have to sacrifice to do that, right? So even if it means you have to move back in with your parents or live on ramen noodles, right? What are you willing to do to get what you want?
Very interesting point. Now, the obvious retort, I can just hear a number of job seekers saying this in the back of my mind. They're going to be saying, work for free. I don't have any money. I don't have any income. How can I work for free?
Can you work for free for an hour a day? I mean, like, look, I have worked at a minimum wage job for 5 years straight, 18 to 23 years old, until I finally got my first office job. That first accounting job in Boston. So 5 years I worked for like $8 an hour before I finally was able to make $45,000 a year at 23 years old, right? So why can't somebody get a job at Starbucks or McDonald's to pay the bills and then be able to work for free in their desired field, whether it's marketing or accounting, whatever it is, to get at least some experience under their belt to get that entry level position and then move up from there? Why is that not possible?
And of course it is possible.
Yeah. I think people are just not willing to suck in their pride, honestly.
Interesting point. Suck in the pride. I like that phrase because pride certainly does play a role in it. And well, there's another piece in here too that makes me think of. I'm going to ask your opinion about this. One of the things that I talk about a lot is the importance of building up one's own confidence and self-esteem about whatever it is that you're trying to attract into your life. Doesn't matter what it is, job, relationship, health, and it doesn't make any difference. And you have a very strong sense of self-confidence. That's come through very loud and clear in the interview here. I've met lots of people in the same age group who don't have that level of self-confidence. What do you say to them?
I didn't always have this self-confidence. I had to learn how to have it. I've had people tell me that I will always be a failure in life. I've had my guidance counselor tell me every week for 2 years straight, every week for 2 years straight, tell me that I will always be a failure. Wow. And that was a shot to my self-esteem and my confidence. I had to find my confidence. And, finally, I think what made the switch, because I didn't actually have full confidence until this year, actually, when I started doing the podcast tour. And it was this thing that I say to myself. I also have it in my bathroom mirror to remind myself to step into this confidence. It's, I am Annie Margarita Yang, and no one can tell me otherwise. Right? Like, people can say anything they want about me. They can be offensive. They can insult me. Whatever they want to do, they can. But the one thing that is my truth that I can stand in is I am Annie Margarita Yang. And there's truth in this statement. It's absolute that other people cannot bring down, right? That's one of the things I say to myself over and over again. Like I got into a pre-interview with a host about a month ago, and she told me that I was unqualified to give job search advice and branding advice. And like, where's my track record of helping other people? And my response is just like, I'm Annie motherfucking Yang, you know, like, I am who I am. I am who I am. I've done what I've done, right? And another thing that has helped me as well to have this confidence is, whenever somebody makes fun of me I say, do you pay my bills? Do you pay me money? Do you pay my bills? Because, we're all equal adults on this world. We all have bills to pay. Unless you pay my bills, I'm not interested in what you have to say. So who's important to me is the guy who pays my bills. That's who's important to me.
But that takes a certain amount of self-confidence to even say that. I mean, that's the interesting challenge where self-confidence is concerned, because you kind of need a little bit in order to build it.
Well, because I got really sick and tired of people saying the things that they were saying. Like, I don't know why, Walt, but for some reason I've noticed this over and over again in my life. I'm very controversial and polarizing. It's, people either really love me or they really, really hate my guts, even though I personally think I'm very nice and kind and polite, but there are people out there who really hate my guts, and I didn't do anything to them. And so I've kind of just had to learn to say, like, whatever. Right? Like, people who love me, I should be focusing on that. So that, I think that's helped me with the confidence. I think because I've had to grow a thick skin, having so many people tell me they hate my guts, I've kind of just had to learn how to have more confidence to ignore what they are saying about me.
You actually just gave a very important law of attraction lesson right there. It's something that we talk about a lot when we're talking about law of attraction, which is you focus on what you like and what you want, not on what you don't like and don't want. And he said, well, I'm not going to focus on all these people who are downgrading me and trashing me and so forth. I'm going to focus on the people who love me and who appreciate me. That's exactly what you're supposed to do. And lo and behold, look at this. Oh my goodness. It actually led to you attracting what you want. Who knew?
I guess I do the law of attraction stuff naturally.
Yeah. You really do. You really do. This has been really fun. This has been a fun interview, I have to say. I've really enjoyed this a lot. I want to publicly state to the person who we will not name, who was the podcaster who was pre-interviewing you, telling you you're not qualified, and I want to tell her she's not qualified to interview you because clearly she has no idea what she's talking about. If she had actually talked to you the way we've been talking here and heard what you had to say and came to that conclusion, I wouldn't want to be on her show. Seriously, I would not want to have anything to do with her because she doesn't know what she's talking about. She has no idea.
I think so. She doesn't have anything. My friend, who is also someone who's into law of attraction, but she's also like a business mentor and coach to me. When I came to her about this story, she's like, what you need to do, Annie, is you need to learn how to do that backhanded compliment. Yeah. So she was like, this host, she's in her, I think, 50s or 60s. You can clearly tell she's got white hair, right? And then, what was I supposed to say back to her? Like, well, clearly you're someone who's very successful. You sold your company to Bill Gates. You've earned millions of dollars, but, times have changed. And I think you just haven't caught up yet.
Well, I think that's actually, I think that's very kind.
Kind of like backhand.
I think that's a very kind, if you were going to go backhanded, what I would say is something like, I hope you continue to get all the success you actually deserve. That's backhanded. No, but seriously, this has been really good. Really, really fun. Now, the book, once again, is The 5-Day Job Search. I presume it's available everywhere that books are sold. I mean, that's usually the case.
Yes, it is available from like Amazon, Walmart, Barnes & Noble, Target, etc. But you can actually get the audiobook for free. The 5-Day Job Search audiobook. You can go on www.annieyangfinancial.com. That's ANNIEYANG financial.com. At the top of the page, you'll see this link. It says audiobook. Just put in your name, your email address, and you can download the book.
Oh, wow. I mean, audiobooks are usually the more expensive versions of a book. You're giving it there for free. That's really something.
Well, the book is 49 chapters long. So
it doesn't matter. I mean,
I know. But it's because if you listen to the book, then you're not going to find success. It's not going to work if you just listen to the 5 hours of it. What really guarantees success is your ability to read it and take action. Read it and then take action. So I'm assuming after people listen to the book, they're like, oh my gosh, she put so much information. It's 49 chapters long. I got to buy the actual book so that I can refer back to it and then actually work out the plan, because this isn't something you can do overnight after you just read the book. It's something that takes time to implement.
And do you work with people too, one-on-one?
I do, but I'm actually trying to avoid that because I want to make sales straight from the book.
Okay.
So, it's just way too time consuming to work with people one-on-one. So what I've been doing is I'm doing this podcast tour. So I'm booked on 125 shows to sell the book. And then I have a list of about 500 organizations here in Massachusetts to reach out to for speaking engagements to sell the book as well. And then like, I'm trying to turn this into like the Marie Kondo's The Magic Art of Tidying Up kind of thing that like kind of just sweeps the country because everyone wants to get this book.
How is it working out so far?
Sales have not been what I thought they were because I realized that when people listen to a podcast, they don't necessarily go and buy the book. They're listening to the podcast while they're commuting or jogging or at the gym. So they're not going to like stop what they're doing to go buy the book. They like the concept, but I realized that people don't necessarily buy something, especially an idea. What I'm selling isn't necessarily a product. I'm selling an idea, right?
Right.
And a philosophy and a paradigm shift. People need to hear something about 10 to 11 times, be exposed to it around that many times before they're like, you know what? Maybe she's onto something. I want to buy this.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can't necessarily do anything about 10 to 11, but I can do something about 2 because we've had you for the show here. I'll add a second one in by putting a link into the show notes. So that makes it easy for somebody to find it on Amazon. So they don't have to go hunting around for it. So just by making it a little bit simpler, maybe we can give them one more exposure that way. But Annie,
thank you so much.
This has been great. This has been really, really fun. Thank you so much. Best of luck with the book, man. I mean, it's fabulous what you're doing. I love how you just break it down to a simple approach that anyone can do. I mean, there's not a lot of rocket science in this, is there?
No, not a lot. And since people listening are into the law of attraction, they're going to love this book because I have law of attraction story after story.
There you go. All right. Cool stuff. Well, thank you again. We appreciate you so much. Best of luck with the book. Let us know what happens. Let us know, what happens after you do your 125 or whatever it is episodes of, podcast episodes. I'm going to be curious to know what kind of result you get out of that.
All right. Thanks, Walt.
And thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.